The last plate was a slice of apple pie, still warm enough that the scoop of vanilla ice cream I'd added was already beginning to melt, a pale creak running down the latticed crust. Cole slid it across the stainless steel pass, his movements economical and sure, the way they always were. His knuckles were scarred from burns, and his forearms were a roadmap of faint white lines from nicks and cuts, a testament to 10 years of dicing onions at speed and pulling hot pans from the oven without thinking. He pushed 2 forks onto the plate beside the pie. "Sit with me, Leo." His voice was low, rough around the edges from a 16-hour shift and a lifetime of shouting, "Order up," over the clatter of a busy diner. It wasn't a question. It was a quiet command, and it stopped the world. For 5 years, my world had been a predictable orbit around this man. I took the orders, I wiped the counters, I refilled the coffees, and he cooked. He was the fiery, solid center of the universe. I was the satellite, always watching from a safe, lonely distance. We had a rhythm, a well-worn professional groove. This broke it. The diner was empty, a strange and hollow version of itself. The last of the late-night truckers had rumbled off an hour ago, leaving only the hum of the fluorescent lights and the gurgle of the coffee machine. It was just us. My heart, which had been plodding along at a weary, end-of-shift pace, picked up a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I looked at the pie, then at him. He wasn't looking at me, not directly. His gaze was fixed on the street outside, where the first hint of pre-dawn purple was staining the black sky. His profile was all sharp angles, a strong jaw dusted with dark stubble, a straight nose, the heavy line of his brow. He looked tired. More than tired. He looked worn down to the bone, the usual gruff energy that surrounded him like a heat shimmer having finally dissipated, leaving something quieter and more vulnerable in its place. "Cole, I've got to close out the register," I said, my voice sounding thin and reedy in the sudden silence. It was a weak excuse. Closing out took 5 minutes, 10 if I was feeling meticulous. He didn't turn. "Register can wait." "Pie can't." He pulled the stool out next to his, the one usually occupied by regulars who wanted to complain about the weather or their wives. An invitation. I felt a familiar, stupid flutter of hope, the kind I'd learned to crush the moment it appeared. He was straight. Everyone knew it. He'd dated half the waitresses who had passed through here over the years, a string of cheerful, pretty women who had all eventually drifted away, worn out by his long hours and his emotional distance. He was just being friendly. Lonely, maybe. That's all this was. My feet moved before my brain could raise any more objections. I slid onto the stool beside him, my knee brushing against the worn denim of his jeans. A jolt, electric and warm, shot up my leg. I flinched away instinctively, my own personal brand of cowardice. He didn't seem to notice, or if he did, he gave no sign. The space between us felt both impossibly small and cavernously large. I could smell him, not just the lingering scent of fried bacon and onions that clung to his clothes, but something deeper, more personal. A faint, clean scent of soap and the unique, musky smell of his skin. I had spent years cataloging these details from a distance, and now, being this close, it was overwhelming my senses. He pushed the plate into the space between us and picked up one of the forks. He used it to nudge a piece of the crust, breaking it off. "Made this one with Granny Smith's," he said, his voice still quiet. "Gives it a bit of a bite." I picked up my own fork, my hand trembling slightly. I hated that. Hated how easily he dismantled my composure. I focused on the pie, on the perfect golden brown of the crust, the steam still gently rising from the filling. Cole baked when he was in a certain mood, a pensive, solitary state that usually meant something was weighing on him. His pies were legendary, but they were almost never for the menu. They were for him. Sometimes he'd give a slice to Marge, the morning waitress, or leave one for old Mr. Henderson who lived upstairs. He'd never shared one with me. Not like this. I took a bite. The apple was tart and firm, bathed in a cinnamon-laced sweetness that was cut by the saltiness of the buttery crust. The cold, creamy vanilla was the perfect counterpoint. It was, like everything he made, deceptively simple and utterly perfect. "It's amazing," I managed to say, the words thick with more than just pie. He grunted, a sound that could have meant anything, and took a bite himself. We ate in silence for a few minutes. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence, not yet. It was the shared, weary quiet of two people who had just survived a war, or in our case, a Friday night dinner rush. I found myself watching his hands. They were big, capable hands, the nails clean but the cuticles ragged. I watched the way his fingers curled around the fork, the precise, economical movement as he brought it to his mouth. I had watched those hands chop, flip, sear, and plate thousands of meals. I had fantasized, more times than I could count, about what it would feel like to have those hands on me. My own hands felt clumsy and useless by comparison. I was an observer. My entire life had been spent on the periphery, watching, cataloging, never participating. I watched my parents' marriage crumble from the corner of the living room. I watched my high school classmates fall in love from the back of the bus. And for 5 years, I had watched Cole from across a stainless steel counter, my heart aching with a love so secret and so profound it felt like a physical part of me, a tumor growing on my soul. He set his fork down with a soft clink against the ceramic. "You're quiet tonight," he observed, turning his head to finally look at me. His eyes were a dark, indeterminate color, brown in some light, almost black in others. Right now, under the harsh fluorescent glare, they seemed to absorb all the light in the room, giving nothing back. They were unreadable, and I felt pinned by his gaze, like a butterfly under glass. "Just tired," I lied. My mind was a frantic hive of activity. What does he want? Why is he looking at me like that? Say something normal. Say something a straight guy would say to his straight coworker. "Yeah," he sighed, the sound heavy. He ran a hand over his face, the rasp of his stubble loud in the quiet room. "Me too." He looked away again, back toward the window. The sky was lighter now, a soft, bruised gray. The streetlights flickered off, one by one. I followed his gaze. We were watching the town wake up, a slow, reluctant process. I wondered what he was thinking about. Was it one of his ex-girlfriends? Money? The rising cost of beef? With Cole, it was impossible to know. He kept his thoughts locked down tighter than the cash box. But I was a student of Cole. I'd made a long and painful study of him. I knew the subtle shift in his shoulders meant he was stressed. I knew the way he chewed on his bottom lip meant he was concentrating hard on a new recipe. And I knew that this particular brand of quiet, this heavy, weighted stillness, meant he was wrestling with something deep inside. My knee brushed against his again. This time, neither of us moved. The point of contact was a tiny, burning star in the vast emptiness of my day. I held my breath, waiting for him to pull away, to reestablish the boundary I had just imagined us crossing. He didn't. The warmth from his legs seeped through my thin work pants, a solid, grounding presence. He cleared his throat. "Saw you talking to Sarah earlier." Sarah was our newest waitress, young and bubbly and relentlessly flirty. She had made it her personal mission to get Cole to go out with her. "She was just asking about the specials," I said, my tone carefully neutral. That all she was asking about? He glanced at me, and this time, there was something else in his eyes. A glint of something I couldn't name. It looked almost like amusement. "She thinks you and I are a thing," I blurted out, then immediately wanted to swallow my own tongue. My face flushed hot with shame. Why would I say that? It was the most idiotic, self-sabotaging thing I could have possibly said. I expected him to laugh, or to look disgusted, or to finally jerk his leg away from mine. He did none of those things. He just held my gaze, his expression unchanging. A slow, infuriatingly calm half-smile touched his lips. It wasn't a grin. It was just a faint upward tilt at one corner of his mouth. "And what did you tell her?" he asked, his voice a low murmur. My throat went dry. I felt like I was walking on a high wire, the ground 1,000 miles below. Every instinct screamed at me to lie, to make a joke, to brush it off. I told her you're not my type, or I told her she should keep trying, anything to get back to solid ground. But I was so tired. Tired of lying, tired of hiding, tired of being a ghost in my own life. The pie, the quiet, his knee pressed against mine. It had all conspired to dismantle my defenses. I didn't tell her anything. I whispered, my eyes dropping to the half-eaten pie on the counter. I just walked away. The silence that followed was different. It was charged, electric. I could feel his eyes on me, studying me. I risked a glance up. The half-smile was gone. His expression was serious now, intense. He looked like he was trying to solve a complex equation. "You do that a lot," he said. It wasn't an accusation. It was a simple statement of fact. "Walk away." My breath hitched. He saw me. He actually saw me. He didn't just see the guy who refilled the salt shakers and remembered which regulars liked their coffee black. He saw the way I moved through the world, the way I retreated, the way I disappeared. It's easier, I admitted, the words feeling like they were being pulled from my chest. Is it? He asked, and the question was genuine. It was full of a curiosity that felt both terrifying and thrilling. He shifted on his stool, turning his body more fully toward me. The space between us shrank to nothing. His scent was stronger now, intoxicating. They don't usually want to hear what I have to say, I said, trying to explain a lifetime of self-effacement in a single, clumsy sentence. Try me, he said. The words were a dare, a challenge, an invitation. I stared at him, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. This was it. This was the moment where I could either retreat back into my safe, gray world, or I could take a single, terrifying step forward. His eyes held mine, and in their dark depths, I saw not disgust or judgment, but a steady, unwavering attention. He was waiting. For me. What am I doing? This is my life. My job. My quiet, manageable existence. I could lose it all with one stupid, honest word. He's my coworker. He's a man who has only ever shown interest in women. My brain is screaming at me, a chorus of well-rehearsed fears. Don't do it. Don't be a fool. But my heart, my stupid, traitorous heart, is whispering something else. It's whispering, what if? What if for once you don't walk away? What if you just stay? I take a breath. It feels like the first real breath I've taken in years. The air is thick with the smell of cinnamon and coffee in him. I look at his mouth, at the faint smile lines at the corners, at the way his lower lip is slightly fuller than the top one. I've memorized this view from afar, and now it's right here. I watch you, I said, the words coming out in a rush, a quiet confession. All the time. I noticed things. His expression didn't change, but a muscle in his jaw twitched. What kind of things? He prompted, his voice a low growl that vibrated through the stool and into my bones. The way you rub the back of your neck when you're stressed. I began, the words tumbling out now that the dam was broken. The fact that you hum, very quietly, when you're making bread dough. It's always the same song, some old country tune I don't know. I know that you hate when customers ask for steak well done, not because it's a culinary sin, but because you think it's a waste of a good piece of meat and it offends your sense of practicality. I know that you keep a picture in your wallet. I saw it once when you dropped it. It's an old, faded photo of a woman who looks like you, standing in front of a porch swing. Your mom, I think. I stopped, breathless, my face burning. I had laid it all out. The depth of my observation. The sheer, obsessive weight of my focus on him. I had just shown him the full extent of my crazy, and I waited for the inevitable recoil. He just stared at me. The silence stretched, taut, and unbearable. I could hear the buzz of the lights, the frantic beat of my own pulse in my ears. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the impact of his rejection, for the quiet pity or the harsh laughter. Instead, I felt a warmth envelop my hand. I opened my eyes. He had placed his hand over mine where it rested on the counter. His palm was calloused and warm, his fingers long and firm. He didn't lace his fingers with mine. He just covered my hand with his, a simple, solid gesture of possession, of connection. The song, he said, his voice husky. My dad used to sing it. When he was fixing his truck, my throat was too tight to speak. I just nodded, my eyes locked on his. And the picture, he continued, his thumb beginning to stroke slowly, deliberately, across the back of my hand. Yeah, that's my mom. She's the one who taught me how to bake. He was giving me pieces of himself. Small, precious things. He was answering the unspoken questions I had held for years. He was meeting my vulnerability not with rejection, but with his own. The steady, rhythmic stroke of his thumb on my hand was doing things to my insides that I couldn't begin to process. It was a conversation without words, a confirmation that I hadn't scared him away. He was still here. He was touching me. He leaned in closer, and the world narrowed to the space between our faces. The smell of him was all-consuming. I could see the tiny flecks of gold in his dark eyes now, something I'd never been close enough to notice before. You see a lot, Leo, he murmured, his breath warm against my cheek. But you miss things, too. What do I miss? I whispered, my voice trembling. His eyes flickered down to my mouth, then back up to my eyes. The look was so direct, so full of undisguised intent that it stole the air from my lungs. "You miss the fact," he said, his voice dropping even lower, becoming a rough, intimate rumble, "that I watch you right back." And then he was closing the remaining distance between us. It wasn't a rushed or aggressive movement. It was slow, deliberate, giving me every opportunity to pull away, to be the person who walks away. I didn't. I couldn't. I stayed rooted to the spot, my entire being focused on the feeling of his thumb stroking my hand and the sight of his face coming closer to mine. His lips touched mine. It wasn't like anything I had ever imagined. My fantasies had been full of desperate, hungry kisses, born of years of pent-up longing. This was nothing like that. It was soft. It was tentative. It was a question. His lips were chapped from the kitchen heat, but surprisingly gentle. He tasted of coffee and sugar and something that was just coal. For a second, that was all it was. A simple, soft pressure. Then, I felt him sigh against my mouth, a deep, shuddering exhalation, as if he'd been holding his breath for a very long time. I responded without thinking, my own lips parting slightly. That was all the encouragement he needed. He deepened the kiss, his other hand coming up to cup the back of my neck, his fingers tangling in my hair. His thumb pressed into the sensitive spot just below my ear, and a shiver traced its way down my spine. This was the real thing. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a fantasy. Cole, my Cole, was kissing me in the middle of the empty diner, his hand warm on mine, his lips moving against mine with a slow, searching tenderness that spoke of a longing as deep as my own. All the years of silent pining, of hopeless observation, of feeling invisible, they all melted away in the heat of that kiss. I felt seen. I felt found. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing heavily. He didn't move away. He rested his forehead against mine, his eyes closed. His hand was still tangled in my hair, his other still covering mine on the counter. We stayed like that for a long moment, just breathing each other in. "Cole," I whispered, the name a prayer on my lips. He opened his eyes. They were dark and serious, all traces of his usual gruffness gone. "Yeah," he breathed. "I know." He knew. He knew everything I had been feeling, everything I had been hiding. And he hadn't run. He had leaned in. The first gray light of dawn was filtering through the front windows now, painting the chrome and vinyl in soft, muted tones. The world outside was starting its day. But in here, in our little bubble of silence and shared breath, a new world was just beginning. Then, the fear started to creep in. The cold, familiar tendrils of anxiety wrapped around my chest. This was a mistake. A moment of late-night loneliness. He was tired, he was vulnerable, and I was convenient. The cold light of day would come, and he would regret this. The shame would set in, and he would pull away, leaving me more broken than I was before. I felt my body tense, my own internal programming kicking in, preparing for the inevitable retreat. I started to pull my hand out from under his. A subtle, almost imperceptible movement. But he felt it. His grip tightened instantly, not painfully, but with an undeniable firmness. He pulled back just enough to look me in the eye, his gaze sharp and focused. He saw the fear in my face, the doubt clouding my eyes. I was already walking away, right here in front of him. "Don't," he said, his voice flat and absolute. It cut through my rising panic like a knife. "Don't you dare." I froze, my hand still half trapped under his. He let go of my neck, but only to bring his hand to my jaw, his thumb resting on my cheekbone. The gesture was possessive, grounding. He forced me to keep looking at him. "You think I do this lightly?" he asked, his voice low and intense. "You think I haven't spent every damn night for the last year watching you dart around this diner like a scared rabbit, wondering what it would take to get you to just be still?" My mouth fell open. A year. He'd been watching me for a year. The thought was staggering, impossible to comprehend. All the times I thought I was being so careful, so invisible, he had been watching me the whole time. The realization sent a shockwave through me, rearranging the entire history of our shared space. Those lingering looks I had dismissed as my own wishful thinking, the times he'd found an excuse to stand a little too close, they hadn't been in my head. They had been real. "I'm not good at this, Leo," he said, his voice softening, a note of frustration creeping in. He looked away for a second, as if searching for the right words, something he rarely had to do. I don't talk about things. I cook. I work. That's what I know how to do. He met my eyes again. But this you. He shook his head, a small, frustrated gesture. This is different. I don't know what the hell it is exactly, but it's not nothing. And it's not a mistake. He held my gaze, his dark eyes demanding that I believe him. Demanding that I, for once in my life, accept something good without questioning it, without trying to find the escape hatch. The reassurance was so absolute, so quintessentially cold, direct, unflinching, and a little bit angry, that it finally broke through my wall of fear. A shaky laugh escaped me. It was a wet, choked sound, half sob and half laugh. A tiny smile touched his lips in response, the tension in his face easing. What? He asked. I shook my head, overwhelmed. I thought I was going crazy. All this time, I thought it was just me. No, he said, his thumb stroking my cheek. It wasn't just you. He paused, his expression turning serious again. It's never been just you. The truth of it settled into my bones, a deep, warming comfort. I wasn't alone in my secret world. He had been there all along, in a parallel world of his own, watching me back. We had been two lonely satellites, orbiting each other in the dark, each thinking we were the only one looking. He let go of my face and picked up his fork again, nudging the last piece of pie on the plate. It was a mess of melted ice cream and broken crust. He scooped up a bite and held it out to me. Eat, he said simply. I opened my mouth, and he fed me the last bite of pie. It was an act of such simple, domestic intimacy that it made my heart ache. We were just two tired men, sharing dessert at the end of a long night. But it felt like a vow, a beginning. He set the fork down and leaned back on his stool, finally letting go of my hand. The loss of contact was immediate, and I felt a pang of disappointment, but he just stretched, his back cracking audibly. My shift is over, he announced to the empty diner. He slid off his stool and grabbed his worn jacket from the hook behind the counter. He didn't look at me as he put it on. My stomach clenched. Was this it? Was he leaving? He shrugged the jacket on, then turned to me. I was still sitting on the stool, feeling lost and untethered. He just stood there for a moment, watching me, his hands in his pockets. You walking out with me, or are you going to spend the rest of the morning staring at that empty plate? He asked. There was a teasing light in his eyes now, a glimmer of the playful confidence I'd seen him use with others, but never with me. Relief washed over me, so potent it almost made me dizzy. I have to close out, I said, but the words had no conviction. Register can wait, he repeated, his voice firm. He held his hand out to me. An offer, a clear, unambiguous choice. Stay in the old world, or step into the new one with him. I didn't hesitate. I slid off the stool and took his hand. His fingers laced with mine, a natural, perfect fit. His palm was warm and strong around mine. It felt like coming home. He led me out from behind the counter. We didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say, not right now. He just held my hand and pulled me toward the front door. He didn't even glance at the cash register. For the first time in 5 years, I left the diner without locking the door or turning off the coffee machine. The morning air was cool and clean, washing away the stale scent of grease and bleach. The sky was a pale, hopeful blue, and the first rays of sun were gilding the tops of the buildings across the street. The town was quiet, the world holding its breath. We stood on the pavement for a moment, our hands still linked between us. He lived in the opposite direction from me. This was the natural point of separation. I felt a familiar knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach. He turned to me, his face softened by the dawn light. He looked younger, the lines of exhaustion less pronounced. I'm tired, he said. But I don't want to go home. He paused, his gaze unwavering. Not alone. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, a fact, an admission of need that, coming from a man as self-contained as Cole, felt more profound than any declaration of love. I knew what he was offering. Not just a night. He was offering a morning, a shared coffee, a quiet space where we could figure out what this was, together. He was offering a continuation. My place is closer, I heard myself say, my voice steady for the first time all night. A slow smile spread across his face. A real one this time. One that reached his eyes and made them crinkle at the corners. Lead the way, he said. And as we walked down the silent street, our hands clasped together, the rising sun warming our faces, I felt the last of my old, lonely world fall away. I had spent so long watching life from the sidelines, convinced that was my place. But I was wrong. Love hadn't been a sudden, dramatic event. It had been a slow burn, a quiet observation, a shared slice of pie in the lonely hours before the dawn. It hadn't shouted. It had whispered. And all I'd ever had to do, was be brave enough to sit down and listen.